Okay, well here we've got an ArchiCAD project with an AutoCAD XREF in it. It's the XREF that we looked at before, and by now we've done a little bit of ArchiCAD work done to it. Basically the walls have been traced with ArchiCAD walls, doors have been inserted, the plan's been rationalised a little bit, doors, windows, but it's not finished by no means. So I've got this sort of simple skeleton of a project. Now we're basically going to have a look at a particular method you might employ to work with an XREF, because obviously you're not going to want to see your XREF all the time in our ArchiCAD project. So first thing we have to do is make sure that we can see the AutoCAD stuff easily and the ArchiCAD easily. So to do that we're going to go to the organizer and start playing around with the views. So then we're going to start arranging things in terms of the display so it suits our methods of working. So at this point I'm going to click on Control or Apple L and open the layers palette, and we're going to create a couple of new layer combinations. First of all, I'm going to select all the AutoCAD layers, which are pretty easily distinguished because they're underneath that line in the layers palette, and we can see that they are all AutoCAD layers, and there is another movie on this DVD that talks about this, so I'm not going to go over that. And then I'm going to click on New and create the new layer combination, which is going to be called No AutoCAD. Now this is by no means a call to arms or anything. It's just a name. So now we can see that there is no AutoCAD overlay on our ArchiCAD plans there. Then I'm going to drag that view across to the right hand side and call it No Overlay. Then I'm going to go back to the layers palette, and this time I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to select all the AutoCAD layers. In fact, I'm just going to click on Show and Unlock All, and I'm going to select all the ArchiCAD layers, hide them, and create a new layer combination. And we're going to call this combination Overlay Only. So that's going to be just our AutoCAD layers showing, and I'm going to drag that view over to the right hand side again, and of course I'm going to call this Overlay Only. Now obviously what this is going to allow us to do is toggle between the AutoCAD stuff and the ArchiCAD stuff. Now on top of that, what we can do is set the opposite view as an overlay or a trace reference. So by right mouse clicking on it, we can say choose as underlay, and then as you can see, we can see the underlay underneath our ArchiCAD project. Now I'm going to open the trace and reference palette, and here I can change the colors there so we can see it a little bit better. Now you can see the AutoCAD stuff or the AutoCAD layers in orange, and now that is there just as an overlay, so we can't select it accidentally, and the overlay can be changed considerably. We can choose different colors, it can be faded out, and we can also use the virtual tracing paper and pull a slider back, and then we can see the XREF underneath and peel back the ArchiCAD model to see how we're going. In the same way, if I start working in one of the elevations, we could also, let's just say I open the south elevation, we can also choose the reference, or I could say define the view as overlay only, and we can show that as a trace reference. In this case we would probably try and line up the trace reference with our ArchiCAD project. So I'm just going to use the palette and select a hotspot and line it up with the hotspot on the ArchiCAD drawing, and there's our overlay. And I might change the color a little bit here and bring the overlay on top. So once again we can see the differences that we've made and how well we're following the AutoCAD stuff. Now in each of these elevations the overlay sits in a different position, and also the rotation will be a little bit different as we move on to the side elevations of the building. We probably want to start saving those as views. So I'm going to open the organizer and I'm going to start saving those. So I'm going to click a new folder, call them elevations. Then I'm just going to drag that south elevation into the elevations folder. It's important to remember that in our saved views that we have on the right hand side of our organizer, it will actually remember everything about the view. So in this particular example we've got the elevation and the overlay is set in front of the model and it's green, and then when we click on the ground floor we can see that the overlay is actually orange and it's behind it. Now these are all remembered in the view editor, so it's important to remember that, and it certainly makes our job easier. So I'm just going to create another folder, and this time I'm going to call it plans, and I'm going to drag that ground floor plan into there so it also remembers the settings for that ground floor view for a later time. And then as I click on this button here I can turn the overlays on and off, as you can see. So there's another option. The next thing we're going to do is have a look at another elevation, because the elevation as it's brought in from AutoCAD is actually drawn all on one page. So all the elevations are along a straight line, and some of them may be upside down, and the elevations on this particular example are sideways. So we need to rotate the overlay so it lines up with our models. So now we're going to go back to the navigator and choose a different elevation. I'm going to choose the west elevation, then I'm going to go up to the saved views and click on the overlay only and right mouse click on it and click on it as show trace reference. Now that the overlay is showing underneath, we can see how it's oriented incorrectly and we need to fix that up. So to rotate it, go up to the trace reference palette, open it up, check this icon here. I'm going to drag it to the right point first. Or in other words, I'm going to line it up with the bottom of our model, and then I need to rotate it. Click on this icon here, zoom back in, select it, hold the shift key down, rotate it around 180 degrees, holding the shift key down, and then I just need to move it just a little bit more. Click on that, line it up. When it ticks there, I can click again and it should be in the right spot. Then again I'm just going to change the position of the overlay by checking this button here, and then change the color of it once again, make it green, and increase the intensity of it so it's in front. So once again it's easy to see how far our model is different from the AutoCAD XREF. And once again I'm going to save that view, and do that by dragging that over into our elevations folder. And I'm going to call this a north elevation. Now this elevation obviously has a fair bit of work to do on it, but at least we know how to work with it. So in this sort of manner we can keep working with our XREFs without having to do anything to the AutoCAD drawing itself. So once the work is done in ArchiCAD, what we're going to do is actually set it up in the layouts and have a look at sending those drawings back to AutoCAD. Okay, we've done a little bit of work on this ArchiCAD project, tracing all the AutoCAD XREFs, and I've created a layout, several layouts in fact, for the different levels in the building, as well as one A3 layout for the elevations. What I'm going to do now is export them back to AutoCAD. What's quite important to make it easier for the AutoCAD users to deal with ArchiCAD drawings is to set up the display options so that there is no fills in the drawing, in the floor plan or the elevations. So at this moment we're not showing any fills in the walls, so I'm sending back just a plain line drawing, and the same for the elevations. There are no fills or no hatches. Just makes it a little bit easier for the people in AutoCAD. So I'm just going to work from inside the organizer. So I'm just going to pick the subsets that I want to export, and I'm going to drag those over to here, put them into my publisher window, and for both of those I'm going to have to set up the publishing properties, which is basically where it will be saved to. So I'm going to save them to my desktop at this stage. I also want to set up the format, which is obviously going to be DWG. And before we hit publish, let's just have a look at the format and the options for export. And this window is quite similar to the dialog or the translator that brings the AutoCAD drawings into ArchiCAD. And just quickly, we're going to have a look at the most important things. The drawing units, it's going to be 1mm. Save options, there are a few things in there that we're going to have a look at. The file format, choose the version of AutoCAD that you want to export to. If there are any images within our layout, we're just going to export those in the original format, which would probably be JPEG or something like that. We don't want to include any temporary files. When it comes to saving the layouts, we have a choice of saving as paper space with drawings as blocks. In this case it would be our elevations and floor plans inserted as blocks, which is probably not the best option. Paper space with cropped views content, which is paper space with viewport zoomed to the extent of each of the elevations and the floor plan, and paper space with full views content, meaning that the drawing would have a paper space set up with all the elevations sitting in one viewport, and model space, which is dumping all the drawings as model space. I'm actually going to use paper space with crop views. Place drawings into either a single DXF DWG file or linked XREF drawings, in which case in the single or the first option it's one AutoCAD file with all the drawings in them plus the layout, the paper space to show them in viewports. Linked XREF drawings would create an empty file with the paper space layout and a separate folder in which each of the contents of the viewports would be saved as a separate DWG and XREF into the empty file. Convert complex elements to blocks. That makes sense, so the windows will come in as blocks into AutoCAD. And setting for the zones, stamp and fills or stamp only, and stamp only is probably the wiser choice there. Then under attributes, there are the typical settings that we quickly had a look at before: conversion of layer names, pens and colors. There is a general method where you can convert ArchiCAD pens to AutoCAD colors by setting the best matching standard AutoCAD color, which is probably the best, rather than RGB color. Pen color conversions work in exactly the same way as before, but in reverse. So now anything that's pen 22 will go to AutoCAD as a yellow pen. Line type's the same. That's really basically it. There are several other settings here where you can set up more and more accurate settings, but this is usually quite acceptable. I'm going to save and close, and then once all those settings are done, we can say publish this set or the selected items, push the publish button, and now it's saving our AutoCAD drawings. And that's basically it. Now we're going to open AutoCAD, and we're going to open the drawings that we exported from ArchiCAD in AutoCAD and have a look at what they look like. So I'm just going to go File Open. I'm going to start with the ground floor plan. Then you get a warning that this drawing hasn't been created by an AutoCAD drawing. You just click Continue. And because we've set the export to a paper space with a crop view, this is our A3 paper space. The title block comes through without a problem. We have a viewport in the middle of the space, and inside the viewport we have our floor plan scaled at 1:100. If we click on the model space, what you can see is the actual floor plan. All the dimensions have come through correctly. They are still associated with the objects from which they were initially created, so they actually update. The text has been replaced by the SHX fonts that AutoCAD has. I'll just open the elevations as well, because what happens with elevations is that you get the A3 layout, you get the viewports with all the elevations inside them, zoomed to the correct scale, 1:100. The titles have come through, and in model space you simply get the row of elevations, just like you'd expect as normally drawn in AutoCAD. All the layers have come through, and you also notice that all the drawings came through in one colour, in black. That's only because we've set our export from ArchiCAD as all the drawings in the layout were actually just black line work.